discussing board and responsibilities. By the way, if you have any specific questions you'd like to ask him, feel free to ask that in the chat and we'll respond at the end of the session. Dr. Otsuji has over 28 years of experience sitting on boards in both the public and private sectors. He is the chairman of the board of directors of Nova Early College High Schools. He's the chairman of the board of directors and president and CEO for Safe Harbor International. He's executive director of Camp Oakhurst, Inc., and the director of Olive Crest Keeping Children Safe National Program. Formerly, he was executive director of the Olive Crest Abused Children's Foundation, as well as a former chairman of the board for the Olive Crest Homes and Services for Abused Children. And as if this nonprofit work isn't enough, Dr. Otsuji was also the former chief senior chaplain of Orange County Sheriff's Department, as well as a pastor. So please join me in virtually welcoming Dr. Sanford Otsuji.
Well, thank you, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I'm assuming so. We were having some trouble on my computer sound system, so we're doing it from my iPhone. One of the things that I just want to start with is that we realize that many of you have been parts of boards, have been perhaps chairs of boards, and at least members. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to be talking about that you may be very familiar with. And then for some of you who have not been, this might be new stuff. But nonetheless, it's going to be good because it's a good refresher. And from my standpoint, I know that it's always good for me, even though we talk about it, it's good for me to be remembering some of the things that are important in a board. So as you lead your boards, it's critically important that you pay attention, at least to some of these things that I want to speak about today. So first of all, knowing one thing is, what is the purpose of your board? You need to stop and consider that and make sure you really understand what the purpose of your board and how can you make your board more effective is another thing that you can consider. The other thing is that we want to one thing about trying to understand even better the vision and the mission of your organization, each one of yours, and do the members all know what that mission and vision is? And so, critically important is for you to know. I think we become, as our heads of our particular organizations, we need to be so passionate about it and to really understand why we do what we do. And I think that particular passion will pass on to the membership. And we desire that because it becomes a strong membership, an important part of any type of organization. So when we look at the functions of the board of directors, we're going to look at governance, strategic direction, and accountability. So I'm going to read a small thing that I've got for governance. And if you could hear me all right, well, I'm hoping you can, that a definition would be: governance has been defined to refer to structures and processes that are designed to ensure accountability, transparency, responsiveness, rule of law, stability, equity, inclusiveness, empowerment, and broad-based participation. And all that said is just that's what we endeavor to do when we look at governance. In a broad sense, governance is about the culture and the institutional environment in which the citizens or the stakeholders, in this case, themselves, and how they participate and in the public affairs. And it's more than the organs of a government. It is more so in this particular case, in your cases, it's the ability to be able to connect to one another and to to see the like-mindedness, if you will, from each of your organizations. And so, you know, I try not to go through all the read all the stuff on there, but it's important. If you can look at this a little later, it's important for you to see what governance is and consider those things. The other thing is in the strategic direction. And I think that's important for you to understand that strategic direction is a set of activities and decisions, you know, an organization needs to make and achieve its goals and objectives. So again, to you, many of you, this is very obvious to you, but I think it's important to at least consider it from time to time so that you keep on track and keep your board on track and keep your organization on track. So first of all, an organization needs to decide on its overall purpose. And most of you have, from what I've seen on your websites, have some great missions, visions, and what you're doing out there. So you've got that down. You understand what that is. And part of your strategy is how do you bring that forth? How do you continue that on? Because those are all great endeavors. But on the other hand, if we just stop there and not promote it or propagate it anymore, it just seems to become now a social event. And there's nothing wrong with social events, but if you're trying to run an organization that is going to enable the membership to be as good as they can be in that organization, you'll find that we need to look at what that overall purpose is. And once the organization knows what its overall purpose is, they can figure out how to achieve it. Of course, that's how you go about that. And it involves planning, and that takes some time. And so we'll talk a little bit later on that because it's important how you begin your plan, so to speak. And so the direction is all that. So you see all this, and you're from the building, the fellowship, the social events, the education part. I think it's important because we're all trying to improve if we can, and you have certain ways that you can achieve that even within your organization. The community involvement is always important, and reaching out. One of the things that organizations like yours, I think, may have maybe a challenge would be how you grow your membership, and so that community involvement will also help in that. One of the things also is your pro bono parts that you have, which I think there's a lot of satisfaction when you're able to do those type of things, and it makes it so people all benefit from what you're doing out there. And again, the membership advocacy, as you see down here, like for example, the judicial endorsements, highlight attorney achievements that you do on your websites that I see, I think is great because it enables you to, frankly, show off some of the people that you have within your membership. And I think that's always important that we look at how you do all those things. And we're going to talk about committees in just a little bit as well. And then the strategic management or part of that management is in the training and mentoring. So many board members come on and they're enthused, but they don't really understand or realize what their role is. It's not, it can be so important, and it is so important for each member to be there. And as you see, and depending upon how you make decisions within your board, you'll see that people have gifts, and you want to utilize those gifts as much as possible. So if you look at those things, and you can see basically how you can mentor and you can help these people to become the best that they can be, I think is great. So you want to use that to do that with your board and any volunteer, in fact, that comes on to your organization that you can utilize. So the direction is critically important. We want to make sure that we understand what our strategic direction is. We've had many times, people come to our board meetings and they have some great ideas, but many times it doesn't fit within the direction within what the board is actually doing. It doesn't mean that you can't change some things so that, change some of the areas of your vision and at least the mission that you have, that can be done. But many times it's beyond that. So you kind of lose the focus of what you really came in for, or what they came in for. So got to be careful that we don't spread out too much. And usually they're all great things. They're all important things in society. But in your board, you have specific, direction that you want to go, that your board wants to go, your whole organization needs to go, and you want to stay within those parameters. Does that make any sense? I hope that makes some sense to you. As far as accountability is concerned, I think it's so important for us to take a look at that, because when we look at accountability, we're talking about really the importance of a board to stay within the realm of what you're supposed to be doing. If you stay in that and you know what your actions are, and you're true to those actions being exactly what you want to be doing as an organization, that's a terrific thing. That being said, you become responsible. So you're accountable for it. And it's important that as a responsible, group of people, being the board of directors, you're going to be speaking as one body, if you will, one group, and everybody speaks together with it. And so you make those decisions as the oneness of bringing forth to the whole membership as well as to the public. And so one of the things that in the accountability is who is speaking for the board. Do you have a person that you have decided is the person who actually is the mouthpiece, if you will, of the board? It can be the chair or the president. It can be a PIO or or a public information officer, or whatever you might want to call that particular person, or designate anybody who can speak for the board. The critical part of that is that that person speaks for the board, and you don't have a lot of other discussion coming from different people, which can dilute or confuse any of the statements that come from the people who lead the organization. And so it's really, really important that you do that. For instance, I don't know how you all feel about, the press in many ways, and how the direction in many cases can be either exaggerated or misinformed, or maybe just embellished in a different way. But when you say anything to to the media, it's going to be what is going to be said, and it better be very clear, and it better be as non-emotional as possible. It's a statement from the board. It is what the board says and directs and stand behind. And because I can't see your faces, I don't know what your response actually is on that, but I can tell you that it is very important, because you can be misconstrued as a speaker for the board very easily, for the organization very easily. And you say, well, what could possibly be happen that would be necessary? It could be almost anything. It could be misconduct. It could be something that it could be a part of an event. It could be anything that you as a group are involved with. And so what the accountability is, it all kind of falls on you. You're the board. You're the representatives of the organization. So you'll end up being the ones that would be targeted, if you will, for responsibility or accountability. And again, that's important for you to know. When and if you have an issue that is critical or very negative, that's when you need to come together as a group. And you'll see again a little later on that we have special board meetings and things like that. But that's when you're going to come together and deal with damage control. And again, many of you have been involved with companies or areas that you have had to do something like that. But there are ways you can help mitigate that, and that's partly you can enlist a media or marketing firm or a PR firm that specializes in those type of needs, where they're very good on being able to position your organization in a way that is as good as it can be and represents everything that you as a board or as an organization would say. So we've had a number of those things happen, particularly when it comes to education, when we look at the school type organizations where it's a public entity and everything is very much out there. Everything is publicized. Your board meetings, your notes, it's even recorded. Every part of that board meeting is recorded. So anybody has access to it. So it's a very difficult thing to navigate if you're having a major issue, and you want to make sure that as a board that you, because you're accountable for all that, you want to make sure that you position yourselves the best you possibly can. You also want to consider positive marketing. There's so many things that you do very positively that should be marketed as well, or at least brought forth to the public to see, and particularly your membership and how that's happening. And you do that many times by showcasing people and what they have done. You have showcase programs such as the Stop Hate program that I've seen most of your organizations having, and I think those are huge and probably not publicized enough, because I think we want to get a message, or you want to get a message out that you have very big concerns about that, and that you're utilizing any of your wherewithal to be able to facilitate those programs and to help in areas like that. And you have resources in the judicial side as well as the governmental side that I've seen, and you want to utilize them as much as possible. And as a board, coming together as a board to be able to show these particular either judges or justices or the government agencies or whatever, that you are a functioning organization that decides we want to stand with a particular thing and we're proud of it. So the accountability thing is critically important. So also, you on your packet there, if you will, we're looking at board membership. It's fairly simple. What is your expectations? We always say that our board members are ambassadors for the organization. So when they go forth, they talk about the organization that they belong to, whether it's a school or whether it's an organization that helps people. It's the fact of the matter is we're proud of that because we're passionate about it. So we can talk about it, but we're ambassadors for it, and we talk about the organization. You probably do that with other attorneys who you might want to solicit becoming members of your organization. And I think that's a great thing to do. If you're passionate about it, you know how important it is, and you know how good it is, you're going to bring that forth. And kind of more on the practical side, if you will, you're all very busy. I know that you have a lot of things on your plate, and then you have an opportunity here to be part of a board or to lead a board. And while nobody really has all that crazy extra time, you'll find that this is a real important part of your life, because it actually kind of becomes who you are, because what you do is you believe in what you're doing, and you want people to understand and also join you in that same passion to support one another, care about one another, help one another in areas that perhaps they can use help in, and to encourage those who perhaps have had some issues that that would actually needs as much encouragement as possible. So I think that being part of a meeting and making sure that at minimum, I think we've always had a minimum that they needed to participate in 50%, at least 50% of the meetings, and you may make that 75%. It's difficult, I understand, but everybody needs to try the best they can. And as presidents of each of your organizations, you want to encourage the participation as much as possible from the board level, as well as from the general membership. And then, again, people are busy, and many times they get so busy that they just can't participate. Then you need to have some sort of, I guess a device of some sort, or at least a mechanism to be able to ask them to either resign or vote them off, whatever it might be. How do you, suspend or terminate or whatever it might be, some sort of mechanism to be able to do that. And with the understanding, we all understand their situation, but we need as much participation as possible in order to keep the organization moving in a great, at least in the momentum that you want an organization to be. So those are kind of the most practical things there. I'm not sure how each one of your organizations have what kind of committees you have, and the type of committees that you have. I want to encourage you to utilize the committees as much as possible, because most of your great decisions come from committee work. Now, Kim and I talked a little bit about that in the past, few weeks of, does that have to be only board members? No, not necessarily. It can be. And usually a committee for the board is like a finance committee, with the finances that come in for the organization, you have a finance committee doing that. And you might have a committee that actually will do the screening and invitation of prospective new board members and the like. But also when it comes to like fundraising, or some of the advocacy areas that you're involved with, or doing going out to the membership body many times is a good thing to do. So you can put together a committee that one of the members of the board basically will chair that committee, and then report back to the board as a result of what they find in a particular need that you have within the organization. The example would be events, because I know that you all do some sort of events every once in a while. So you have an event. I don't believe it should all fall on the responsibility of the board to pull off an event. You have many talented people within the membership who would love to be able to be part of the planning, the implementation of it, all the things, some of the research and where to do things and what the costs are and so on and so forth. And that all would go to the committee chair, who would be part of the board, who would report back to the board to make a decision on where, and you would do anything that would make some sense. And then also, you should also have a kind of an executive committee, and usually that executive committee isn't a big amount of people or a large amount of people. It would be, your chairman or president, your vice chair or vice president. You would be your secretary, your treasurer, and generally that's all. Or you could have another one or two in there. You don't want to have too many people, because again, it becomes in a board meeting. So you want to make sure that certain decisions can be made with the executive committee. Some purchases that need to be made on a limited basis, if you will. I think some people you might see here that the cap for approval is $500. It could be $100. It could be $1,000. Whatever you decide what that might be, so that you don't have to come back to the board for decisions like that. The executive committee could make those kind of decisions. Are you all hearing? I hope you're hearing okay, because I'm hearing a kind of a sound coming through. The area about board terms, if you will, some of you have 1 year, some may have 2 years, and some of you have 3. I've seen some of your websites say, one of them particularly has the 3-year, which I think is the best way, in that you would have something like a 2023 to 2026 term, the 2022 to 2025, 2021 to 2024, and then you have a staggered amount of boards going on and off. And that way you don't have the whole board leaving at one time. The reason why I like a 3-year is because two reasons. You engage these people for 3 years to be part, and they get to be more familiar with one another. And secondly, replacing 1/3 isn't as hard as replacing a half or all the board. So you don't want to keep the learning curve being way too steep. And you actually can nurture, board, chairs or presidents during those particular times, should you change board presidents every year. Even in our board, I've been the chairman of the board for a couple of the organization for a lot of years, but they are still 1-year terms. So if I should choose to drop off that particular position, it's easily done, and then others can step up if we should want to do that. I think they find that it's hard to find too many suckers to do it for that period of time. But the fact of the matter is, there is a mechanism that allows for that to happen. So you might want to consider that as how to do that. Getting toward the end here, we're talking about board meetings, the preparations. As far as the agenda goes, most cases the president decision it's going to be on that. You want to allow.
Excuse me, Sandy.
Yes.
We're getting some feedback. Can you start all over with this section?
Okay. We're talking about, in general right now, the board meetings. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. So in preparation of the board, typically the president has a major input in the preparation. But I want to encourage you, because we encourage our board members, if they have any areas that they want to bring forth to the board meeting, this is a good time to send in those requests so that those items can be, if pertinent, put on the board agenda. And I think that's an important thing. You might also want to put it out to the membership if they have any items that they'd like to have put on the board agenda when the board meeting happens. So you can do that, but generally speaking, the chairman or the president of the board helps develop the agenda. So, usually it's the usual way. But, one of the things that you don't want to do, as in my opinion, you don't want to do as the president or the chair, you don't want to be the one who has to do everything. You don't want to be the one who has to print out the material should you have in-person board meetings. And I'm assuming that the eventuality, if you aren't already doing that you're having in-person board meetings. And so you need to print out the material, the agendas, any pertinent materials that are needed for the meeting itself. I can tell you that in the public setting where, either the board of, the boards of either school districts or in our case, our school district is the charter schools that we have. They cannot do Zoom as a meeting. They're not going to be able to do that as of, I think, the beginning of March, I believe that's it. So it has to go to an in-person. So I don't know if you're doing in-person board meetings or not. You're not required to follow the public, type of board meetings like we have to, at least on that particular board. The other boards that I sit on, we typically will resume the Zoom because it's much easier for people to be part of. So you have to make that decision if you have to maybe have both, have a place that you have in person as well as participation with Zoom.
Sandy,
yeah.
I screen shared a copy of one of your public agendas.
Oh, okay.
As a sample.
Be happy you don't have to do that. You can, but I don't recommend that for an organization like yours. But I can tell you that there's a lot of things that have to accomplish in a school district type of environment, and again, you may not have that big of an agenda, and I'm assuming you don't, because most of the nonprofits that I'm involved with have considerably less, and you can accomplish a whole lot in the time that you have. That being said, you want to make sure that all the things that the board needs are available, and I think that you need, in your case, you need to probably do reminders. So who does the reminders, and who sets up the water and the food if you have food at your meeting? I would recommend, and again, I don't think that the president or the vice president or any of the one person on the board have to do all that. You might utilize, in our case, we utilize some of our staff, and we pay them, but then we utilize some of our staff to help us out, and they can also see and understand the kind of the passion that we have within the organization itself. So you can do things like that if you want, or you can do it yourself if you want. I think it's a lot of work, and yet if you're doing it because you really desire to have a great outcome, then all the more power to you. But utilize your staff if you can. Utilize people, and try not to do it yourself. One thing that if you ever ask me about board meetings, what the most important thing to me, and this is Sandy, it's not necessarily a mandate, is that one thing I would recommend, that it does not become one giant committee meeting. And boards are there to govern, to have the strategic direction of the particular organization, to utilize those kind of giftings that you have to run an organization. The more you have a lot of the minutia type things in your board, the longer that board meeting is going to be. And I make it very clear in the boards that I'm on, is if there's a lot of conversation about it, not that you shouldn't have any input at all, but if there's a lot of research that has to go on and you're trying to do it while you're in a board meeting, I think that's not a practical way. And that's why we put it to a committee, and we have the committee do an exhaustive research on it, and then make a recommendation. And because normally the people that you have on your committees, you trust, when they make a recommendation, on the most part, we buy into that. If we don't, then we'll send it back to the committee saying, understand these things that concern us. Just can you clarify that? Can you make sure that these areas are taken care of before we implement that particular recommendation? If that makes sense at all. It should make sense, because you do not want to have 3 or 4 hour board meetings. You want to have, and I think a 2-hour board meeting is sufficient, because you're making decisions and you're implementing direction, and then you can stay around for an hour or two later because you're socializing. But the business part of it needs to get taken care of. Now that sounds maybe a little harsh, but be happy that I'm not chairman of your board. But you can do, like I said, in person versus Zoom. Zoom has been pretty phenomenal. I mean, how do you do without it? And it is a great opportunity, a great way of doing it. And as far as the understanding that your duty to the organization, you have the fiduciary, responsibility. You're the ones that make decisions for what gets spent and what not going to get spent. And so even when you have a treasurer, it's really the direction of the board. And that, generally speaking, is a major, financial decision. And usually anytime you're doing a program or an event type of thing, you're usually in a position to spend a lot of money. Even if you think you're going to receive a lot for it, that you could be spending a lot of money. The confidentiality of what goes on in the board, that's something you have to decide. There are certain things that you want the membership to know. You want to make sure that they understand that the board made a particular decision or a direction that you are moving in, and you want the membership to understand that. So you may want to utilize the board meeting to get notes out to the membership saying, the board has decided that this is a direction we're going to go in. We're going to implement this particular advocacy or whatever it might be. We're going to have this particular event. You're the ones who are steering what the membership hears. But that brings you to another critical part, is that to ensure that the membership knows that you care about them, that you're involving them, and the decisions that you're making are for their benefit. And so I think that's an important facet that we should all understand. And once again, things that I am saying, it's really important that you as a board president understand that you're kind of the rudder for your your organization. You're the one who's steering it in the right direction. So the more enthused you are, the more passionate you are, the more strategic and directive that you are going to help the organization see clearer. And I think that's an important thing. Coming towards the end here, occasionally you might have an emergency board meeting. That could be for any reason. Usually it's something that's either controversial or that you have to make a decision quickly. A lot of times you might make a quick decision, and you might utilize email. You may do Zooming. You might do things like that. But usually it's something that is critical, and you need to have a face-to-face, and you need to talk about it, and you need to talk it through. These emergency meetings are usually on one item, a particular item that has come up. Again, it could be something that, just for lack of, being able to sit and think about it, it could be something one of your board members has done, and now it became public, and you need to come together and make a decision and how to handle it. And you need to bring forth a particular, just single dimensional, response. And you want to do that as a group. So you want to come together and have what we call an emergency board meeting. And, how long of a notice would that be? Usually it's only a day or two, and you're asking people to come together to do that. Very important, because once again, your input as your board input is really important, and the solidarity is critical. And so even if some are going to, maybe buck against it, you have to say, look, we're going to do this together, and we have to come as one. And, we all want you to understand that we're taking everything that you think in consideration, yet at the same time, we need to come together as one. So those are important things. And you can do that in many ways. You can make decisions like that, but you need to have, or you have to have a, I'll call it a board consensus that you're making these decisions. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Hopefully you don't have to do that very often in terms of having to make some critical things like that, where you have exposure to a lot of maybe adverse type of PR that could happen because of it. And it could be not necessarily just the board, something happening with a board member. It could be part of your membership that something's gone on. One of your members have done something that has been concerning something that gets out, and you're marked as an organization that person belongs to, and so as an organization you have to come forth with some sort of statement. Consider that. Also, kind of preempt and that by having an access to a PR firm that specializes in things like that, critical response, just so you have it on board saying, hey, if we ever have anything, I'm maybe calling you. And that's what we do. And we, quite frankly, have utilized that a number of times. And then lastly, the general thoughts, for you presidents is, again, it's important for you to review the mission and vision of the organization. I was telling Kim that in doing this, presentation, it makes me think, yeah, I need to do the same thing. I need to be thinking about what our mission and vision is, and I need to remind our board members of that so that they think of that. And so I think it's a good idea, no matter how long you've been part of a board, that you need to, be careful that nothing is just status quo and you just keep going and you're going through somewhat of the motion, but you continue to do it with a passion, understanding what the mission of that organization is. I like the idea, and we do, in all cases, the boards that I've been part of is have a board retreat. And what that does is of course, it's easy to see that it enables you to get together and get to know one another more. You can talk about things, regarding the organization. Once again, in the public arena, anytime that you have your board, together, and you're at a less, even if you're at a less than, majority, you got to be very careful, because if you have, a quorum at any time, even in a social setting, it needs to be advertised as a board meeting and posted 72 hours and so on and so forth, unless it's simply social and you do not ever talk about business. That's the public. But in an organization like yours, you can talk about all the things that we're talking about today, and the vision and mission and so on and so forth. And I think it's an important way to go. As presidents, I would encourage you to call every once in a while and see how your board members are doing. A, you'll find out how they're doing, and B, they feel like they're cared for and that there is good communication. And that's kind of always, every time I see any conflict, it's always said, hey, we just didn't communicate. We need more communication. So, I would suggest and encourage you to take the effort of doing that. So, contact them. And you want to interview anybody who's desiring to be part of your board. Yeah, interview them. Interview the board members you have now to make sure that they're on track to, knowing what they're doing and why they're doing it. Always good stuff. But last but not least, it sounded dry, and I apologize if it was dry. We want you to have fun. And, you're doing this as a volunteer, and you're doing it because you care about the organization, and you should have fun doing it. I just want to encourage you to have fun. I also want to encourage you to not let the statement, I'm just a volunteer. I'm going to encourage you to, squash that as fast as you can if anybody says that, because they're part of an organization like this, and particularly our board. As important as the board is, that they're doing it because they want to be doing it, not because they have to be doing it. They're not just volunteers. The paid part of it is I'll say just the accomplishment of what they're doing and the gratification of what they're doing. So, and encourage that, but also at the same time, have them have fun, because you want to do this because this is a good thing to be doing. With that, that's it. So Kim, if you have anything else.
Thank you so much, Sandy. As I mentioned previously, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the chat box. I did wanted to ask you about liability of board directors, Sandy. So let's say, for example, we're voting on an event and one of the board members vote no on the event, but someone gets injured at the event. Is the board liable, the entire board liable, even including the person who voted no? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I guess we should have talked about, D&O insurance. You should have directors and officers insurance for all organizations anyway. But, I think that as we've spoken before, you act as a oneness, if you will, as the board. So even if somebody, voted negatively on a particular action, you still, by virtue of majority, did that as a decision as part of the board. So everybody's liable. And really, I think most of you of all people know, because you're all attorneys, know that unless it's something that is gross negligence or the like, you're really not responsible. If someone got injured, unless it was, again, gross negligence, then you have to decide who is the liable party, whether it is the facility itself that the person was at, but usually it has nothing to do with you, and so you're going to be in a fine position, I think. But again, you guys are the expert in terms of when it comes to the legalities of all that. But from the standpoint of what we do as an organization, we're saying when we make a decision, we as board of directors, we're responsible, but we're doing it in the best interest, of the population.
We had another question. Could you explain why D&O insurance is so important for a bar association?
I think for some of the reasons that we talked about earlier, I think it's always important for any organization to have D&O. I mean, some of the other liabilities for the major organization, you probably don't have to have, but I believe that the board should always have, any board should have, nonprofit or profit, should have D&O insurance. And the reason why is to protect the board members, financially, as well as financially primarily, right?
I was formerly president of the Vietnamese American Bar Association, and we looked into D&O insurance for our organization. It was around $200 per year, so it's a good investment for any of the other bar associations who are looking. I don't know how much your D&O is, Sandy. It's a big enterprise.
Considerably more, but for an organization like yours and any one of you there, I agree, Kim, that it won't be substantial. And I would encourage you also, if you are going to rent out venues for events, that you look into one-time insurance policy for the population that you're taking into a venue, even though they have it, and it's nominal. I mean, it's a few $100s at most, for a liability insurance that you can take. It's usually $1 million.
We had another question that came in. Any tips for motivating and focusing committee chairs?
Well, I think, I'm, a number of different things. I think, first of all, you have people out there in your board who have giftings, and, hopefully the only one that a lot of times people don't like to do is the fundraising side of it, because you have to ask people for money. But the volunteer who heads up the committee is one who will solicit within, I think, once again, earlier I said, within the membership itself, with people who will want to get involved with that. And some of them are very talented in the fundraising side. And part of the fundraising side could be the event side, handling events. And that's a lot of fun for a lot of people. Notwithstanding, it's a lot of work. Usually events are a lot of work. If you who have done that know what I'm talking about. But it is by necessary having a committee, in the chairs of them. I think you reward them by involving them, in things together as a board. Once again, I think that the social element of your board, can substantially help the enthusiasm within the board.
Do we have any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you, Sandy, for this presentation. It was very informative. Everybody's giving you a virtual thumbs up.
Well, thank you for including me. I appreciate that, and wish you the best of everything, and have a great meeting.
Thank you.